but today you're here and let's get beavery. Um, so I've got a really wonderful special guest with me today. I would like to introduce everybody to Dr. Heidi Perryman, who was or is a child psychologist, but became an accidental beaver expert and advocate when beavers adopted her. So beavers moved into her neighborhood, and the neighborhood needs beavers, but beavers also need an advocate. And she stepped up to be that in her hometown and found a way to kind of make a to help the whole community celebrate the fact that this was now a beaver town, and really put its beavers on the map and help turn them into something that the community, instead of being kind of irritated about, because there are some challenges to having a beaver in your backyard, um, to something that the community took a lot of pride in. And part of the identity of Martinez, California, became it's beavers. And from businesses to government to the people living in town, um, she really helped people connect with their local beavers. And I think that this is a wonderful model for how we can do um, sort of um, conservation in a way that really helps everybody um, be present with whatever their local wildlife is. So Heidi, I think you've got an amazing model for how to help people fall in love with nearby nature. And I'm really delighted that you're joining us on the show today.
Well, thank you so much. That's a very nice thing for you to say. Um, Actually, I didn't make the changes or make people get interested in our beavers. They got interested because the beavers were very, very public and easy to see. And people got excited because you were able to see beavers in your neighborhood. And I just want to say that I was really happy that Jack asked me to be here today and that we met almost 20 years ago, if you can believe it, when he came
Oh, yeah. No, notice the lack of gray hair.
to illustrate our beavers. And no, we're both little children in those days. To be honest, we've gotten older and smarter since then, so that's good.
Well, I have gotten older, but
We've gotten older, but not smarter.
well, we'll leave that for others to determine. But I'm still having fun.
Yeah.
Oh, lovely. All right, I'll be quiet now. But I'm just so delighted that you're here with us. I do want to just say again that the way that people could have met these beavers, um, you really helped the beavers become a part of the community, and having a bipedal sort of hominid really helps these little beavers be able to for people to see why they should love them. So
Yeah. Well, I'm really grateful that we were able to turn things in the beavers' advantage. So the beavers came into town in 2007 and they built their dam and a lodge in the creek in the middle of Alhambra Creek. And the mayor and the city was worried about this dam because the creek was prone to flooding even without beavers. And so they got a permit right away to kill these beavers. But as you can see, these were really easy to see beavers. So everyone on the got engaged with them. All the kids on the way to school, all the lawyers on the way to the courtroom, all the businessmen looking for a place to park. Everyone could see these beavers. And in those days, you could go down to Starbucks and buy your morning latte, and you could stroll out onto the patio and watch them play. Uh,
mm.
the mom and dad beaver that year had 4 babies, which were adorable, visible in the center of town. And baby beavers, they make this kind of low whining sound, almost like a child crying. And I thought, gosh, that is what a sound. Do the people that think these beavers should die even know about this sound? And if I let these beavers die, when am I ever going to hear that sound again?
Mm.
So maybe I'll work on it for a weekend, maybe for a whole week. How long could it possibly take? So I'll let you know when we get there. Oh, people weren't happy about the idea of the beavers being killed. So kids started collecting signatures at the local deli, and people started talking to their local politicians and the media, and we were in all the state papers and the evening news. And at one time, we were even on national news. So there was so much of a fuss about these beavers that the city decided it had to have a big meeting to discuss them and what they had to do. And some 200 people showed up for that meeting. And I did not make those people show up. Those people made me show up. They came from uptown, downtown, and out of town, and they said pretty much with one voice, "We do not want you to kill these beavers. Find another way." It was an amazing meeting. I sometimes describe it as the last 5 minutes of It's a Wonderful Life, mixed up with Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, because it was that good. The Sierra Club was there, the Humane Society was there, the superintendent of schools pledged funds to have students plant trees for the beavers and do a study. It was pretty amazing. So, faced with massive public outcry, the city agreed to try something different. They ended up hiring this gentleman from Vermont. He came in from 3,000 miles away and he put in a flow device at the dam. Now, this had never been done in California before. And when people called Fish and Game and said, "Hey, do those things work?" They said, "They never work. Don't even waste your money." But we thought we'd try it anyway and see what happened. And this controlled the level of the water in Martinez since 2008. It entirely worked, even though nobody probably thought it was going to. But back in those days, the city never agreed to let the beavers stay, even though it worked. And we thought they might change their minds after the public attention slipped away. So we thought it might be good to throw a party for the beavers, because then they'd be harder to kill. So we held the first Beaver Festival back in 2008, and I started the group Worth the Dam to educate people and advocate for the beavers. So the first Beaver Festival was tiny. It was some wildlife groups, children's activities, and some music. And they were so much fun. We do them every year. This year will be our 16th. And it's June 28th, and Jack's on vacation in Greece that week, so you should definitely come. Um, we have a lot of interest in kind of teaching people about how to promote urban wildlife, how to educate children, especially about the nature that's all around them. We have this great artist that comes in from Mappa, and she loves beavers, so she does this giant chalk mural in the creek. And we really have encouraged a lot of local artists to get involved in beavers and pay attention to beavers. One of the coolest things in Martinez is this giant mural from Tim Hahn of the Illuminaries. You know, they're the really big spray paint mural people that do like sports team stuff, but he just happened to be living in Martinez at the time and he saw a beaver, so he did a great beaver. And I told him one of our beaver secrets that I'm going to share with you guys today too. We also saw that children drawing beavers was really important. It helped kids learn about it, but it also helped adults pay attention, and it also made the media pay attention, and that made politicians
Mhm.
do better. So it was a magic potion of making things better. Um, I really think it turned everything around. We all know now that there are really good reasons to cooperate with beavers, including biodiversity and storage of water for drought, and actually now knowing that beaver habitat reduces the spread of wildfire by as much as 3 times.
Wow.
Um, and I think there are lots of reasons to cooperate with beaver. And I wanted to just tell you two secret messages about drawing beaver, because I think there needs to be hundreds of beautiful artists in the world. And the first secret message is teeth. What you see, the cartoons are wrong. Beavers don't have big top teeth that you see. They have long bottom teeth. So almost always, not always, but almost always, you will see bottom teeth first. Teeth are orange because of the iron in their diet, and their nose is kind of like a dog nose with the nostrils pointing out towards the side. On the right-hand side of your screen, you'll see a picture, and you might think it's a beaver, but it ain't. It's a nutria, and some clues that it's a nutria are that it has these big top teeth, right? And it has white whiskers, and it has nostrils that face forwards. Um, and much of the world that is creating art right now, or looking at pictures, or looking at photographs, they are misguided and get confused about nutria and beaver. Even the New York Times, everybody. So once you know this, you will be smarter than most of the world. And I'm so happy that I'm getting to see all of you get excited about drawing beaver, and that I got to talk to you today. So I would love to hear how this goes now.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Why don't we let's stop that share, and why don't the um
Do I have to magic?
there we go. And then there's a button on the screen, I think it says stop.
I want to stop, but I don't have a button.
Um,
I don't have the, oh, there, now I do. Uh, okay, well,
um,
okay, there you go. Stop share. Got it.
there we are. Excellent, excellent. Um, so that is really wonderful. That your description of that that community meeting sounds like an absolute delight.
Was
Uh, the so I was as you were talking, I was wondering what in this case, what do you think were the sort of the major factors contributing to why Martinez sort of developed this sort of beaver identity? So one is that the beavers were they were being really cooperative. So it wasn't just that there were dams there.
that they were in a really obvious place.
Right. So and then baby beavers, that helps.
There are baby beavers every year. I mean, that will always happen, right? In every beaver family. So it wasn't rare.
Hmm.
I think that given where are in the time of the rebirth, the return of beavers on the landscape after the devastation of the fur trade, Martinez was probably the first place where they were visible locally. So that helped.
It's they are just sort of they're solid, sort of wonderful looking creatures, and they also are kind of like, iconic in cartoons and all these sorts of things. So people sort of, they kind of get the whole beaver thing, and to be able to see them, that's really wonderful. So
Yeah.
I
And
really,
can I also tell you a secret reason I think why they were popular is because the city hated them, and a lot of people that were frustrated with the city decided they loved the beavers because they wanted to be opposite of the city.
ah, so that is really interesting. But then by the city appreciating them and adopting them, um, that that's the if our sort of local governments can kind of get on board with what's right for all of us, that's a win-win. I
Well,
I like, if anybody has a question for Heidi, either now, or as you're sitting here, I want to invite you to drop those into the chat, and we'll have a chance to, at the end, we'll kind of curate those and have a chance to give Heidi a chance to look at all of your questions. So while you're thinking of those, what I'd love to do is to encourage people to go beaver spotting near you, and I'm going to show you a few tricks to help your beaver drawings look more beavery. Um, so let's go there now. Actually, I am going to hold on a moment. There we are. Um, so I am going to, let's see which button. Aha. Um, oh, come on. You, my computer's not wanting to change slides easily. Let me, nope, not that. We'll just appreciate this beaver. And look at those lovely bottom teeth. A picture I got from you. But while I'm trying to figure out my tech, I want to encourage everybody just to take that beaver that's currently on the screen and just make a quick gesture sketch. Let's warm up our hands, warm up our pencils. Let's get your first beaver marks on the paper. Go fast, go loose, go sketchy, get your hand moving fast. Don't make a tiny little drawing. Make it bigger. Give your hand, your arm, your shoulder a chance just to move around. So you're doing a fast sketch of that beaver. And here's another beaver. Look at that little guy. Hey there, beaver. Well, we're going the wrong way in the beaver land. And, but at least now I can change slides. So what I want to do is we're going to be taking a look at the beaver. First, we're going to take a look at the head of the beaver, and then we're going to be looking at some whole beaver body, both in the water and out of the water. And we're going to be looking at that from several different angles. Um, and that's what I wanted. All right, there's my little beaver friend. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to sort of, as I'm sketching this, I'm going to show you a few ideas just to kind of help you break down this form. And we're going to be noticing, observing, and also kind of looking at some general strategies for drawing anything that you like. So when I'm sketching something, I often start just with a light, loose framework that's going to give you the big picture of what you're looking at. So here, I've got a big, I'm going to draw a little bit heavier so it's easier to see. right? I'm starting with a big old round beaver face. I'm doing this really lightly on my paper. If I draw this really heavily or with a dark, dark pencil, then it is going to show up too much. I want to kind of create a scaffolding, a framework that is going to help me be able to get these beaver marks down. So the business end of the beaver is all on the top of the head. So the nose, the eyes, and the ears, when it pops its head up, are high above water. And so you're going to have all those features right up on the top of the head of the beaver. So I'm going to put just a little line up here. I often put a line through about where the eyes are. My ears are going to be up there. My nose is going to be there a little bit below those. But I want my nose sort of on a center line. So I'm drawing across through sort of eyes and sort of center of face. When something is looking straight at me, I put a cross right through the face. If it's looking to the side, well, we'll deal with looking to the side in a moment because we've got some pictures of a beaver looking to the side. All right. Now, ears are the furthest apart, eyes are a little bit closer together, and then nose is going to be below that. So let's take a look at the placement of the ears. Notice we're seeing them right out against the edge of this little this beaver space here. So I have kind of a flat head, and I'm seeing just a little bit of ears sticking up on either side. Now let's look at the eyes. Think of this center line. If you just look on one side, how far is that eye from the middle of that space, right? Is an eye on one side right in the center? Is it closer to the ear? Is it closer to the center line? So I like to think of that relative to that midline. And as I look at this beaver, one thing that you can do is you can hold up your little pencil and use it as a measuring tool. So I am going to hold my arm out at the same length, and I'm going to look at from the eye to the center line. And what I'm seeing as I kind of look at those two, it looks like that eye is right between, it's sort of right halfway between. That means that there is sort of half of this beaver's head um, is going to be between those eyes. So that's not the distance from one eye to another. If you've got quarters there, you're going to find the eye at the first and the third quarter of beaver math of that head. So halfway through here, that's where I'm going to get my eye. If you're looking at a herbivore eye from the side, you often see a little round circle. But if you're looking at it from the front, here I'm going to go halfway in here. If I'm looking at it from the front, then what I see is kind of a front corner rounded on the outside. So over here, and then I'm going to, once I've got my little eye shape, I'm going to block in my nose. We'll deal with these kind of floating eyes and kind of help them sit into the head in just a minute. But first, let's place our nose. Now, if you're wondering about like from, what is the distance from the top of the head to the eyes to the nose? Um, don't worry about memorizing this exact geometry because I'm going to take this little beaver head, and if a beaver is looking right towards you, if it's looking up, then the nose is going to be higher. As that beaver head turns down, the eyes are going to be in this space here, right? As the beaver turns its head down, you're seeing the nose relative to the eyes. So here they would all be lined up. Down here, the nose is going to get lower. So as the beaver turns its head down, that distance is going to change. So that means that if you draw it wrong, it's just you've got the head at a slightly different angle. But I'm going to draw something roughly close to what I'm seeing here. I'm going to put in a little block in here to kind of be a placeholder for my beaver nose. Heidi mentioned that the nostrils are on the side, so I can give you a little kind of divot in there. And sometimes what you also will see is either flat here, if it's turned more towards you, turns down a little bit, you'll see a little bit more kind of up pointy business in there. And then we're going to take a look at this. Here's my nose. There's a big space. Remember, Heidi was seeing that you usually don't see those front teeth because they're going to be covered with skin, right? It drops its lower lip down. You're going to see these lower teeth here. So, but look at all this space from the nose all the way down here. So the beaver has a pretty broad face sticking down here. So I'm going to come down here to where my beaver lips are going to be. And my beaver got a little bit of a lower lip here. Now let's put in a few other major features. I want to start with the eyes because this is something that you can do on all your mammal sketches and it really, really helps. If you just have an eye floating in the middle of the head, it doesn't really have any long landmarks and it just feels kind of loose and it wants to wander. But I'm going to give a little bit of structure here. Notice that there's a little bit of bump of skin above the eyes here. So a little bit of, so just to give that little kind of bump of skin. And there's also, I'm going to put in a small little kind of bump of skin below the eyes here. So very often on mammal faces, you're going to find these eyes. Oh, here's an interesting thing. Look, I should have made this eye a little bit further in here. See this distance from here to here, from here to here. Now that I've got so much drawing on this, it's going to be harder to do. But on my next drawing, I'll try to do a better job. If I do something on a sketch and I kind of think like, oh, I wish I didn't do that. You can try to fix it on this. But sometimes with colored pencil, it's hard to erase. Or you can just kind of go like, oh, next time, remember to get that spacing right. After all that talk about, look at how far they are apart. It can happen. That's okay. Now let's put in our muzzle from the front, right? So from coming down from the nose, there's this big whisker bed. And then I'm going to put in, think of sort of big beaver cheeks. So I'm going to have my head go out and we're going to swing down, kind of gives it a little bit of a bear looking face. I'm going to suggest a little bit of texture on this beaver. Actually, I'm going to first put a little bit of shadow inside the ear here, a little bit of shadow inside the ear here. I'm going to suggest a little bit of fur texture. Here's what I'm going to suggest you don't do. I'm going to suggest you don't draw all the hairs all over the beaver. Notice that a bunch of our wet hairs here are clumped together. And when they're clumped together, they're making these little V-shaped wedges, all right, that are pointing in towards here. I'm just going to suggest some of the wetness here. So if I draw hair, it feels kind of blow dried. If I have some of these little V-shaped wedges, that feels like fur matting together, where I'm seeing some of the darker, if there's some of the darker areas between those. There's some fur matted together. And there's a little bit on the side, so give a little suggestion of that there's some fur. Up here on the top of the head, notice if there's a straight line, that could be a head made out of plastic. But if I just give it a few little, then our little beaver friend is going to be doing much better. Let's put some dark in the eyes. Before I do, I'm going to draw a little box around where a highlight is going to be. So as I put dark into my eye, I have a little highlight. This one on this side, you could put one in or make it all dark because that's in shadow there. And the same thing on the nose. I'm going to suggest that there's a little bit of sunlight hitting up here on the front of my nose and leaving a little bit of a highlight up there. Is going to just help that nose look a little bit shiny. Little wet nose. I've got some whisker beds on the sides here. Whiskers are usually kind of coming in lines. See that on this. And instead of drawing in every whisker, I'm going to just give a few. And for this, I'm going to try to, if I draw it like this, here's my whisker, I'm going to get a funky line. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do a little wrist flick like this. I'm going to get a start somewhere in here. And then I can get a few nice, smooth little lines. If I'm going to model this with a little bit more kind of texture, think of your pencil as following the contours and showing the direction of the fur in this. I like to kind of put in little patches of fur. So I see a little bump of fur in here. I'm going to, with my pencil, kind of make a little fur patch in here. If I can suggest that it's wet by a few little wedges of fur in there. Out here along the edge, I'm going to come along here. Here on the forehead, hair is kind of going out like this. Got a little bit of texture in there. A few places, just like I'm going to come around the edges here, put a few of these little flicks in. That makes this feel. See these little dark shadows, these little dark marks that I'm making up here are not hairs. They are clumps between hairs where you are seeing cracks in the fur. So drawing in some of those cracks in the fur. Boop. Let's take a look at a different beaver face. Oops. So still playing with the front view, but this time we've got it down in the water. See, we've got the same basic things going on. And let's take a look at how we might sketch that together. So this time, I could draw that. I could just come along here and draw in a water line. But let's just sort of let's construct this again, because the more little reps we get with this, the better off we're going to be. All right. This time, I'm thinking of this head shape as a, here this one is looking a little bit towards the side here. And my eyes are going to be up here on the top. My ears are going to be sticking up. My nose is going to be not totally centered. My nose is going to be over here. But again, we get that nice broad nose, nostrils on the side, like like Heidi told us. There's my little snout zone. I want this cheek area here to be smaller than this whole cheek area over here, because the head is turned a little bit looking this way. Now let's put in our ears on the top of our head. But as we do, notice that the ears look different. You turn that head a little bit, we can see into its right ear more that we see on the left side of the picture, and on its left ear on the right side of the picture, it's turned away from us a little bit more. So here's what I do for ears. We're going to first just get the general shape of it. I think of the top curve of it, and then we're going to come down and in. There is a zone in front of this with these brown hairs in front of it. And this part I think is really kind of important. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to get sort of a sense of some of those hairs, and I want to get it dark behind them. If I get it dark behind those hairs, then they feel like they're light things sticking out. Top of the head coming over here. And I often work what I call front to back, meaning that if I have one area, let's say I've got the fur, and then the ear is sticking out behind that, I'm going to draw that hair in front first, and then stick my ear behind it. So if I have a little bit of hairs sticking up here, then I have this ear sticking down behind them. I'm just going to get it then dark behind there, and then I have a few little hairs sticking up into that. The eye on the right is going to be closer to the edge than the eye on the left. So there's more space here. So I'm going to have one eye maybe roughly in here. This other eye. So for these eyes from the front, we're coming down, and then we have the bottom part of it. We then have the rounded sides down. Eye number one. Eye number two. I'm going to put a little bit of thinking of some structure around those eyes. Now nose again is going to be boxy. I can see there's a nostril on this side. Still have some nostril on the other side. Now, as I kind of get down to the water line down here, let's think about what that water line is going to do. If I am looking at an object, a duck or a beaver floating far across the pond, that water level is going to be a straight line. If I'm hovering directly above the beaver, I'm going to see the water line as the contours of the whole beaver. It's going to be this curved line kind of going around its head, right? So I see the curves of the edge, but from a distance, I see it as a straight line. So this is top down. This would be from a distance. If a beaver is relatively close to you, right? So let's draw, let's actually just think of a ball floating in the water. From a distance, that little buoy is going to be that. But if you're a little bit closer to that, if you're right on top of that buoy and looking down, you see the full round circle with its little stick sticking up. But if it's a little bit closer to you, you see that bottom edge as having a curve. And then you get even more close to it. That bottom edge gets more of a curve. So the closer the beaver is to you, the more rounded this bottom edge is going to get. So you're saying something here about the distance to the beaver. But a beaver on the far side of the pond, you wouldn't get that. Let's now sculpt this little beaver head. Let's put some pencil lines on this. I want to start with this sort of nice dark area between its eyes. Now I'm going to put in a little bit of suggesting these little kind of bumps of the eyes here. And then there's the whole back part of the head. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make lines that are radiating out from that center line. The way you make your marks in here on these cheeks will sculpt the face of this beaver. So if I make my lines come down like this, it'll feel like the beaver has a straight wall here under its eye. But look at the direction of those fur marks. Notice that they're kind of coming out like this, right? If I get a suggestion of, if I just sort of put my marks in kind of following that, that is helping to turn this little beaver face. Now I'm going to turn some of these into kind of deeper cracks. And I'm not so much drawing the hairs, I am drawing the cracks between those hairs. And if I really want this to feel like it's floating in the water, I'm going to suggest some ripples here. Try to avoid doing this. If I've got, let's say I've got this little object here and it has ripples, just doing, that can look really cartoony. But what I want to do is I want some lines that are going to roughly have a little bit of curve into them. And I want to have those sort of suggest that they're water. I like to kind of for water lines often kind of make these little I'm making little lines that have a wider part and an narrow part. I'll just do some of these little water lines off on the side over here. So this is me kind of with my pencil doing water, kind of up for a little crest. And then you can take some of those and turn them into darker elements. And that does a very good job of suggesting water. So I'm going to put a few of those little water lines around the front of the beaver. And that kind of just gives the beaver a little bit of context. Let's take a look at a side view. Right? Look at those sort of nice points of wet fur. Oh, that's so cool. Notice again that we have the eye, nose, ear all on the top side of the head. We're going to want to make sure we get that. And then where is the eye relative to the nose and the ear? Is it right in the middle? Is it closer to the back? Is it closer to the front? Those are all things which we want to get in our little sketch. So I am going to block this in lightly. Big flat head. I'm going to put a little circle back in here where I have an ear. I have a little nose that's going to be happening in here. So this part is not about detail, it's about sort of placing things on the head. Now, a line between those, I'm going to kind of come up to my eye. I want it closer to the nose than to my ear. All right, let's draw the ear. Well, let me move those arrows out of your way. So on this ear, I am going to, again, drawing front to back. I'm going to start just with it. There's a little kind of some spikes of fluff that are going to be in front of that ear. You're going to come up, back, and around. Normally what I do is I just really darken it in here, and it gets lighter as we get to that outer edge. But this little beastie has some light coloring inside there, which will make this a little bit more challenging. So I'm going to leave a light zone on the inside of this ear. But here's kind of a cool thing. Do you see that little edge? There's a lighter edge on the outside. So the ear is not just a flat piece of paper. It actually has a thickness to it. And there's some light bouncing off that thickness. So what I'm going to do is just give myself a light line so that I maintain a little bit of thickness as a boundary for myself. And then I'm going to darken it inside of that. You're not going to really be able to see that line. I get that little bit of light on the edge of the ear. Over in the eye, now we're looking more at the side of it. If you make your eye too big, it will look cute, but it won't look really beaver. It will look more like a baby beaver. I just said that and I made my eye too big. That's funny. I'm gonna try to get a smaller eye. Yeah, I generally we tend to anything that is really cool, like an eye or a cool beak, we tend to overdo it and make it too big on our drawings. So I'm going to draw a smaller eye in here. And I'm going to give it a highlight. So I block in where my highlight is and then give it some darkness. Give myself a little pale zone around that eye. And from the side, I am seeing a nostril. Actually, maybe before that, I'll give this little beastie a little bit of a forehead. So we're coming up here. And I'm going to put a few flicks in that, suggesting that there's some fluff. I have a little bit of an ear on the other side. Is it forward or back? It's back a little bit. As I put darkness into that back, oh, you can't see it. As I put darkness into that back ear, I want to try to leave some things that feel like maybe some fluff or hair that is sticking up over that edge. Now we're going to come down here. A little bit of a bump above my eye. Cute little rounded nose. And for this nostril is open.
Jack, sorry to interrupt you. Could
Oh,
you?
there's a bird in the way.
Thank you.
Thank you. Pesky waxwings always over beaver nostrils. All right, so let's look at the shape of this nostril. I'm going to go straight on the top, drop it straight down in front, and then I'm going to curve around in the back. And then I'm going to hit that really, really dark. Then I'm going to think of little buffer zone around that I'm going to leave lighter. So below that buffer zone, I can go dark, but not as dark. Right? See how leaving that little bit of a buffer zone there gives you areas for light to be highlighting, light to be hitting the edges of that little nostril. So it's not just putting the dark, that just giving yourself some light around that will help your little beaver nostril. This beaver has its little beaver hands nibbling on something down here. I want to play with some of this fur texture. And again, what I'm going to be doing is not drawing hairs. I'm going to be drawing the dark cracks between these clumps, the dark cracks between these clumps. And that's going to help me be able to kind of do this. So I'm going to start in here and kind of connect the eye.
Jack, sorry. Could the beaver
Oh,
swim a little? Thank you. Perfect. There we go.
Now, if there's ever a part of, I'm actually let this dark come all the way up to the edge of that light zone. I want that light zone to stand out. If there's ever a part that you don't want to draw, just add a little line pointing in saying wet fur in this area. But if I'm trying to suggest this wet fur, it's kind of getting these cracks of that's what's going to you notice I'm not following them crack for crack for crack. I would go nuts trying to count cracks. But I notice that they're kind of long, thin cracks in here. Let's try, so I could continue doing that over the face here. Let's try some of these ones that are kind of down here, just so you can sort of see cracks in a different area. So I'm going to change the slight angle of this. There we go, that worked. So down in here on the cheek. I'm putting wedges, I'm thinking of these as essentially as triangles. Right, so big kind of triangles of wet fur. And then I'm trying to get them to be different sizes, right? So I always say to myself to try to be consistently inconsistent. So these aren't all the same size and shape. I'm trying to get things that are going to be a variety of sizes in there. We see that same thing on sort of beaver from any angle. We're going to do one more head here, and then we're going to jump over to the body. Or maybe this would be a good time for us to just jump more into body. No, let's do one more. This is just such a typical kind of beaver thing to be up to. We're cruising along. Remember I said we've got the nose, eye, ear sticking up above. Now, if we're looking at the distance between these, it looks like how did the eye move to a different location relative to this one seems very much in the middle. So as you're sort of rotating something in space, you can change the sort of the distance we see the sort of the proportion distance between different parts on the face. So go to a new page here. And let's think of this one as a field sketch. Let's think of this as a field sketch. So this is going to be kind of a quick little sketch of this beaver. Right? You go like, oh my gosh, here's what I would do. I'd say to myself, all right, you kind of come up and then you come down and then you come down and then you are flat, right? And then it's squeezing out here. So I'm just trying to block in. You've got an ear. You've got an eye. You've got you've got your beaver nose being all up in here. And without getting into a lot of detail, I'm going to give my little friend a little eye. I'm going to think of those the fur that goes above the eye. It's kind of placing that eye into the context of the head. So that's so much better than just that eye floating like a little island. We have an ear that is coming back. And all I'm going to do is just make it dark inside there. We're going to come around a little bit of an arch onto the nose. And there's that boopable snoot. Big old nostril. I'm going to have a little highlight up there. I'm going to give this a little bit of an edge around that nostril that just makes that nostril feel like it has, there's a little part that is catching more sunlight. One being a little bit further away from me. It's appearing much more flat. And if I want to make this look wet, I'm going to do just a few little lines. I've got lines coming down this way, lines coming down this way, lines coming down this way. Let's just put in those, just remember the triangle. So I'm now not going to look at the reference photo. I'm just going to those little triangles that go up do tons to make fur look wet. Put a few little watermarks around this. Now, as I make this little kind of water ring around it, I don't want it to be too rounded. I don't want it to be too rounded. So I'm really kind of coming out. Not a totally sharp turn, but there are some of my little kind of watermarks, right? Little kind of thing that I do like about this is the general reflection of the head. So I'm now going to put that in when I get to those watermarks. Right. Now, beaver out of water. Beavers have this, so here's how I think of the beaver in my head. I like to I like to, oh, hold on, I need to make one change on my screen here. And actually, I'm going to go for this view. There we go. All right. So there, beaver. Let's talk some beaver structure. I like to think of, we have a box for my beaver head. And my box is bigger towards the back. There's going to be a big body bump. And then we're going to have a tail cone attached to that. So you're going to see this same, so this little section between the head and the body bump, you can get some interesting angles in here. So very often a very useful way to start the beaver drawing is going to be to get this angle across the back. If it's up and sitting up in some strange posture, you will often see right in here some interesting angles. But the so line number one is going to be doing this. Then I like to hang a head. Actually, let's go for, let's kind of clear these. So if we were to think of this in terms of steps, my first step would be this. Then I'm thinking I've got a head. I'm thinking I have a big body bump in here, and then I'm going to block in my tail. Got my your little beaver feet sticking around, depending on what it's doing. These are going to be in different positions. But that is a sort of a useful way of starting off a sketch of one of these little beaver friends. So if we are looking at putting that down on my piece of paper, I'm going to start with that sweep of the back. I'm then blocking in a beaver head out here. And I can make that into a more boxy form if I want to. I have my body bump. I have my booty wedge and my tail sticking out there. That is a pretty good beaver block-in. So on this, since it's being so cooperative and holding still, I can catch that there's a little interesting angle change right in there. To make it look more furry, I'm going to put in a few little tick marks in here. Places where I sort of see some of that fur sticking out, I just like to put in a few little tick marks. William D. Barry makes these wonderful sketches with, really uses that to great effect. I call those Bill Barry marks. I'm going to close my beaver's mouth. And then depending on what the legs are doing as it's walking around, drawing animals walking is hard because it's really difficult to kind of capture, like, oh, you've got one foot that's forward, this other one is going to be back here. And so if you have a hard time doing that while animals are moving, don't worry, it's not you. So artists did not figure out how to kind of place animal feet until we started to use photography. Before that, there were tons of photographs of, or paintings and drawings of animals with their feet walking in all sorts of weird ways. So I'm just copying the photograph here. I've got 1 foot forward, got another one that is coming up here. And then for putting in detail on this, what I suggest you do on something like this is just to look at it in terms of where's the dark and where's the light. So squint at the screen and you're going to see that there's a highlight area up on the back. And that comes down here into the tail wedge. And there's a lighter area on the cheek. And there seems to be a little bit up in here in the shoulder area. So if I can block that in, then what I'll do is, oh, actually there's a little bit of light down in this area here. Then what I do is I'll just will say like, look, this part is dark. And then in these little areas up here, I'm going to make, instead of having it be pure white, I'm just going to have it be not quite as dark as those dark areas. But that kind of strategy of sort of looking for like where are the major areas of dark and light is really, really good for kind of sketching in the field. It's an absolute lifesaver to sort of look at where is it dark, where is it light, and block in some of those shapes. So much better than trying to go like, I'm going to draw all the hairs, and then you're just making those hairs. But here you're actually kind of carving this with the light and the dark. Now my beaver friend changes position. Let's make another sketch with that. It's going to start the same way. Look at that line behind the back of the beaver, right? Get that line, right? It's coming up, it's coming down and back, it's coming up again and over, right? So get that initial line, dooka dooka dooka, dooka dooka, right? How big do I want to make that? Now I'm going to think, all right, I've got a box of a head in here, bigger at the back. I'm going to have my big body bump down here. Look at this wonderful sitting on your tail thing. Sometimes the tail sticks out right between their little feet. So we've got my little beaver arms are up in front here, all the better to nibble you with. I like to look at things sort of like negative shapes, like this little shape of the air kind of coming in here. What is the air underneath its legs? And I'll look at, did I make my bump too big? Did I make my bump too? How can I change the angles of that? My nose, eye, ear line, I'm going to put in here. So I'm going to have a big ear back here. I'm going to have an eye in there. I'm going to have a little nose down going on there. So I've got that blocked in. I can then start to draw heavier beaver marks on top of that. Notice that I didn't like all this extra beaver booty that I put in here. So I'm just cutting that out. Can't see like what are the teeth doing? Can't really see the eye. There's a little darker blob in there. Can't really see any detail on the ear, so the ear is just going to be a dark smudge here. Now that I've got this thing roughly blocked in, let's do that kind of areas of light and dark again. Try squinting at the screen. Squint at the screen. Think of like, okay, so I've got an area of dark on the bottom here that is sort of a wedge down here. There are some rolls of beaver nest that are kind of coming up with dark pieces in here. There's a little bit of a dark edge in here on the bottom of this little beaver arm. And then it's going to be darker across the top of the head, a little bit over the back. And then really dark under here. So now I'm just going to make my darks dark. I have, and the marks that if I put marks in them and those show up, sometimes I'll make those just sort of follow a general direction of what the fur is doing here. So I'm not drawing fur here, I'm drawing the shadow of this mass. And I've got several rolls of beaver nests in here. I have some beaver feet kind of plopping in here, and I'm not getting lost in the weeds of like, oh, what are your toes doing in there? I can't see that toe. What's happening there? I'm just making that kind of a dark shape. And it's got a beaver arm, and it has a shadow behind it here. Now I'm going to make a little bit darker on the back. I'm going to make it a little bit darker on the top of the head. And then I'm going to give it a slight mid-tone in some of these areas. And if you look at mine, it's like the difference between light and dark is too stark. So I just need to make my mid-tone a little bit darker. Then it sort of holds that together as a more unified body that has darker parts in here. Before it felt like there was a light stripe over there. There was a dark stripe. Let's try a different beaver. Actually, I'm going to give you guys something to nibble on. Nom 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 nom. Right. Just adorable. Absolutely adorable. I'm going to do one more um, beaver sketch together, and I think this one will be it. That's some classic beaverness right there. So let's mess with this, and then I'd like folks to think of, um, do you have any questions for Heidi? If anybody would like to share their beaver thoughts, beaver encounters, do you have sketchbooks with beavers in them? Please share any of those if you wish. We're going to draw one more beaver here and see kind of how we would get that down. But my approach is going to be the same thing. I've got a little bump on the head. The back goes up, the back goes flat, and then there's a sharp turn down. So I like looking at what are there any angles? So things like these angles here. Oh, those are so helpful in carving these sorts of things. My head is going to be roughly this big in here. So here's beaver bump. Here is beaver, that little tail, that little rump cone. There'll be a little bit of beaver footness sticking out here, and little beaver hands out here. I'm going to zoom in on that a little bit. And then my beaver tail. Going to go on to the next page. All right. So if beavers are moving around, then try to fill a page with as many little kind of quick sketches like this as you can get. The minute a beaver sort of stops and nibbles on something, and is going to be there for a little bit longer and be cooperative beaver, then I can develop these into drawings that are a little bit more worked out. So let's add some purple pencil on top of this little beaver here. All right. So actually, I'm going to show you kind of a fun thing with the face of this beaver. As I am looking at the structure of this beaver's head, something that is, let's think of this beaver's head not as a round blob, but as kind of cubist planes. So I'm gonna go change my color to this. All right. So I might have sort of initially a kind of, my beaver's head is round. Or I might have sort of my beaver's head is sort of blocky. Either way are fine. But check this out. What I'm going to do is I am going to think of my nose, the top of my lips are right here. Notice that parallel with that is the bottom of the nose. See how both these lines are parallel with each other? If I take a line from this eye and I put it parallel with these lines, notice how that leads to a slight bump up on this side of the head. If I go from the ear here over here, there's a slight bump here. What's happening is I am seeing over the top of the head of this beaver, and there is a plane here, There's a plane here. So I'm going to turn this beaver into kind of boxy robo beaver. What I want you to see is that getting this angle, carrying that angle through that whole beaver head is going to allow me to slightly turn this beaver's head towards me and keep the and you'll see you'll like the way that this works. So know that in the background, that's what I am thinking about. I'm thinking to myself, how can I maintain those little those little angles on when I get to the face of my beaver? So if I were to put that in, I've got,
Oh, oh, you got it. Slightly bit over, I think. Little. There we go. Perfect.
thank you, right? I have eyes in here. I have a top of the nose. I have a bottom of the nose. I've got bottom of my beaver lips. So I've got some beaver lines, just chukka 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 all across there. Now, when I am going to draw this, I have one little ear here. And on that, I'm just going to put it darker inside. Give it a little bit of an edge. Turn towards me. There's going to be a corner, a beaver corner there. There's going to be a subtle beaver corner here. Now this other eye, I'm going to put it in here. Really struggling hard not to make my eye too big. Really hard. I want to draw a big beaver eye. Now my nose is going to be in here. So and then my big beaver lip is going to come in here. Up on my beaver back. Going to give that a few little kind of fluff marks in there. But other places I'm drawing it as sort of a hard line. Sometimes feel like there is a little bit of a beaver hand number 1.
Mm.
A few of those little tick marks. That's all you need to kind of make something feel fluffy. I have feet out here with all sorts of toe craziness on it. What I'm going to do is just suggest a little bit of toe craziness. And let's make it a dark shape. Now I'm going to squint at it. All right, I have dark that comes in here, comes up, comes back down, and swoops around like that. A little bit of a lighter area that comes up in here. And then there's some lighter out here on this little tail business. There's sort of a big dark zone in here. Another kind of dark here. Oh, and then there's some light along the top edge. And it comes over here and down. So you see I'm just sort of blocking in areas of light and dark. Now I'm going to change my pencil angle. Mid-tone. Now I'm going to put in some real darks. Oh, should have lighter on the forehead of my little friend here. Let some sunlight hit its forehead. And a little bit on its neck.
Oh, Jack, is it possible to scooch? Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you. You know what happens is I get looking at the beaver rather than the screen. And then I'm going to put in a few marks to suggest this fur texture. So I first establish these values. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to just put in a few little marks that are going to be fur texture. And a lot of that is going to be, again, with these little triangles, bigger towards the base and getting smaller as you go towards the head of the critter. If I put this everywhere, it's going to take forever. But if I can get a few of these in here, it's going to do enough to suggest this fur texture. And then what happens is people will look at it and they're like, oh yeah, so that's fur that's kind of clumping up, and I can see that. And it doesn't take the net rest of your natural life. Final thing on my little critter here is right now this drawing is having to carry all the weight of this. If you're working on a drawing, that's fine. But if you're doing field sketching, it's easy for us to kind of start getting um, really judgy about the way that a drawing turned out. And if I were doing this in the field, I would start doing this. Like that orange claw. So when I start to also add um, these um, notes and those sorts of things to it, then the beaver drawing doesn't have to do all the work all by itself. And it's a much happier beaver. All right. That, my friends, is fun drawn beavers. So I hope that there are um, the I hope that this is useful, not just for drawing beavers, but we can take some of these beaver strategies and apply them to all sorts of other things that we're doing. So again, it's these things like these parallel guides for blocking in the face of the beaver, sort of turning this way, helps us not get, you know, things in funky places. Looking at that line at the back and just a few body elements. I'm going to get the head box, the body bump, that tail chunko. As you look at like this isn't written down in a book anywhere. If they like, oh my gosh, they got to memorize a different system for each critter. No, you just look at the critter and sort of say, like, if I were to kind of abstract you to a few big chunks, what would you be? And then you come up with your own system and then just kind of go chunk, chunk, chunk. Before you go in to draw those details, just look at your chunk, chunk, chunk and go like, did I make my chunk, chunk, chunk the right sizes? Right. I need to make that body bump a little bit further forward, or I need to make that body bump a little bit smaller, or whatever it is. You make those changes when it's just a little bump. And then you get out your So the way you think with your initial sketch is different than the way you think when you're kind of drawing all your details on there. So like here, you're blocking things in, and then you get to move them around. Here, you're getting to noodle in those details and make them parallel to each other so that you can kind of turn ahead at different angles. Those are ideas you can apply to whatever you like to draw. Most important thing here is putting in some pencil miles. And that's just find things near you. You can do this with your cat. You can do this with your doggy, right? It's harder to do with your goldfish, but maybe try in the middle of the night and see if your goldfish sleeps. I don't know. Let's find out. Be curious, mess around with it, and we'll see what we can do. I would love to, at this time, bring Heidi back into the conversation. Is that all right, Heidi? Bring you back on the screen?
I would be happy to be on the screen.
All right. Hey there. Um, the we are here to take any drawing questions, beaver questions, community activism questions. We would love to entertain any of your thoughts and ideas. Avea, did any questions pop up in the chat? Maybe we can start with that, and then we'll kind of go out to people who are sitting on their questions. If you haven't come up with a question, this is a chance to see what we can ask Heidi. Avea, what do you think?
There were some wonderful questions in the chat, and Heidi did answer them, but it'd still be fun to read them out loud. Chris asked, "Have they built more dams?" about the beavers,
Oh.
and
And I didn't get to answer exactly all of it, but the beavers lived with us for 10 years. They are no longer in Martinez.
Oh,
So they have, you know, gone to greener pastures. During the time the beavers lived with us, they had 27 kids in Martinez over those 10 years. And so those kids have gone off and started families around. We have beavers in Fairfield, we have beavers in Walnut Creek, we have beavers in Nampa. They are probably all descendants of our beavers. But during the time
look at
that
what you started.
I know, we definitely changed the population of beavers all over the bay. We have beavers in San Jose, even.
That's beautiful. Um, Excellent. So, what are there any other questions?
yes, there was a question from Janine about how far will beavers travel back to location if relocated, and Heidi answered that too.
Yeah, beavers can go a long ways, both over water, they can go 100 miles or more, and they can go 50 miles over land. So the question is, how long can they travel? As long as they want. The question is whether they want to come back to you. If you move them, I don't, it depends. I mean, they might find a nice place that they like better.
And also, correct me if I'm wrong, but in more natural environments, a beaver will be in a meadow system for a while, and then they might move upstream to another different meadow system, live there for a while. That gives you opportunities for other things to regenerate if all the aspen trees or willows have been nibbled out of an area.
Right, right. And beavers, just like people, don't stay in one place forever. Yes.
Excellent. Um, are there any other beaver queries?
Not a query, but a thought from Leslie. Nature, orange in tooth and claw. And then she was asking if that was Tennyson's first draft.
Eventually adding more magenta into the system.
Yeah.
Like that. So yeah, isn't that so you've got enamel and dentine. Is the orange part, is that the enamel layer on the teeth?
It's from the iron in their diet. So actually, when beavers are first born, when they're young, their teeth are white. but as they eat more and more solid food, they turn orange.
What's interesting, it's the front surface of the tooth that has the orange on it.
Yeah.
And as you get back there behind it, um, very often on teeth, there's sort of an enamel and dentine. There's parts of teeth that can be softer. And um, if the tooth was all the same hardness, then it might sort of wear flatter. But if you have a surface that is harder, then as things are wearing, that harder part makes the edge. And so you also see that on chewing surfaces,
Yeah.
where there are these little dentine pits. And then instead of it on animals where they don't have that, the tooth just gets worn flat.
And for a beaver, it makes a chisel, so that the softer part of the tooth wears down, and the hard part on the front stays sharp. And so
You-
it's constantly sharpening.
Look at that sort of chisel edge there. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And let me just sort of another kind of fun thing about those teeth. The rodent teeth. This is a porcupine. Um, but rodent teeth grow throughout the life of the animal. And so they're constantly nibbling on things to wear those teeth down. If they didn't, these teeth would grow out and actually kind of circle around back, sometimes into their skull. And that's not good. So if you're constantly nibbling on things, you're taking care of that. But you can just take something like this and see what happens. So underneath there, this is all that tooth that just keeps as you're sitting there, it just keeps growing out and being worn down. That's pretty cool. Um, Andy, can we bring you into um, the conversation here? Is it all right to bring you on screen? Great. I'm gonna add you into the spotlight.
Thank you. I really enjoyed the presentation, and I wanted to know, Heidi, now that the beaver have gone, what, if anything, has the town been able to do to sort of keep the momentum going, to pass on the information and educate the public?
Well, after the beavers dispersed from Martinez, we sort of broadened our mission to to teach other cities how and why to cooperate with beavers.
Okay.
So we have done that we helped the beavers in Napa, we helped work with the beavers in Sonoma, we helped work with the beavers that came up recently in Brentwood. And so we're always doing that. We also continue to do the Beaver Festival and Beaver Education, and have encouraged other people to start beaver festivals, both around the state and across the country, and have helped some beaver events in the UK as well.
Hmm.
Oh, super. Thank you. Thank you.
Excellent. Are there any other questions in the chat there?
I'm not seeing any other. Just oh wait, I'm seeing Leslie just raised her hand.
Um, Heidi, did you say beaver events in the UK? Tell me about beavers in the UK.
Well, beavers entirely disappeared from the UK for the last 500 years, which is one of the reasons they were very happy to find them out here when the explorers found America. But over the last uh, 20 years, beavers have been relocated and reintroduced to England. So there are now beavers in England, in Scotland, and in Wales, and that is a pretty exciting thing because they have lived so long without beavers that they really are learning a lot about reintroducing them, what it means for all the biodiversity it creates, and what it means to share land with something else that has other plans for you. So the Beaver Trust in the UK is huge. They do major work. They are kind of the opposite of us because they are um, very, top down focused, right? They really have a lot of resources trying to teach people about beavers as opposed to what Wortham did, which was to work the other way. So, like for example, fishermen in England have a lot of anxiety about beavers on the landscape. Farmers have a lot of anxiety about beavers on the landscape. So they have a lot of work cut out because people haven't gotten used to them for the last 400 years. And so, but they are doing an amazing job. So a lot of their research is way better than ours.
Hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Heidi,
Yeah.
I'm really grateful to you for coming on the show today.
Well, I'm so glad that I could, and I really just was mesmerized by watching you. And that sideways photo that you drew, that picture is Cheryl Reynolds' picture of our matriarch. So that's Mom Beaver. And that is one of the pictures that is most dear to my heart because she died in a couple of years after she came. So we got a new mom, dad remarried, but I always loved the first mom the best. So I love that photo.
Oh, that's really wonderful.
Yeah.
And it's also, I love that you know these beavers as individuals,
Yeah.
and it's fun to think of all the scions of those sort of spread out all over the Bay Area. So from Martinez to the world.
Yeah, well, it's a weird quirk that when the mom and dad beaver moved in, mom happened to have a distinctive mark in her tail. So that when she had visible teats, you could tell that was mom. And beavers don't have any external sex characteristics. So that just by random chance became really important to the community because we knew who was mom, who was dad. And then, of course, you could follow the family because then you knew who the four youngsters were. And it really was a random act of import.
Oh, what a tale.
There you go. Exactly.
Um, Folks, we're grateful to you for joining us today. I want to encourage people to get out and celebrate biodiversity near you. If there aren't beavers, there's something else. And let's go discover our the wilderness nearby. Um, I also want folks to consider um, what Heidi did to help make the beavers um, welcomed and a part of the Martinez community. We can do the same things wherever we are. Um, we human beings have incredible power over other species. We are the ones who decide whether that population can grow or not. Nature really needs advocates. Nature needs stewards. Nature needs protectors. And whether that's being a PR person for the beaver, or the person who can help, facilitate, a crazy plan, like let's get this pipe, see if we can kind of work this drainage thing. So if it gets higher than this, then, you've got there are what beaver deceivers and all these other sort of systems that people can use to help make coexistence with beavers something that can happen. So thank you for being an advocate for our flat-tailed, big-toothed friends, and I hope you have a really great day today.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. I also want to send out a thank you to my co-host Aveo, the mad botanist Moore. Really appreciate you wrangling these workshops with me. Can I bring you into the screen?
Sure thing.
All right, and spotlight, bing, there we are. So from our team here at the Nature Journal Workshop, thank you all for being here, and we look forward to seeing you again. Be curious, be kind. We can do this together.
Thank you all.